The ground shook before we even saw them. Over 50 Harleys, gleaming chrome and roaring engines, surrounded Oak Ridge Middle School. Teachers panicked, locking doors. The Hells Angels had arrived, but they weren't there to start a riot. They were looking for one specific teacher. And what happened next shocked everyone. Sarah Jenkins loved her job, but she despised the politics of Oak Ridge Middle School, nestled in a wealthy suburb of Riverside, California. The school was a pristine institution where the parking lot was filled with luxury SUVs and the PTA meetings felt like corporate boardrooms. Sarah, a 28-year-old English teacher with a penchant for championing the underdogs, often felt like an outsider among the elite faculty. But no one was more of an outsider than 8-year-old Tommy Miller. Tommy didn't wear designer polo shirts or expensive sneakers. He came to school in scuffed combat boots, faded jeans, and an oversized denim vest that looked like it had seen decades of highway wind. He was a quiet, observant boy who sat in the back row of Sarah's homeroom, always finishing his reading assignments early, but rarely speaking a word. The other children gave him a wide berth, whispering rumors they had heard from their parents. The rumors were true, of course. Tommy's father was Big Dave Miller, a known, fully patched member of the Hells Angels motorcycle club. Dave was a towering man with a thick beard, tattooed arms, and a terrifying scowl. When he dropped Tommy off in the mornings on his roaring Harley-Davidson, the crossing guards would literally take a step back. Despite his father's intimidating reputation, Tommy was a gentle kid. He drew incredibly detailed sketches of birds and possessed a politeness that was entirely absent in the spoiled children of Oak Ridge's elite. Unfortunately, in a school where pedigree mattered more than character, Tommy had a target on his back from day one. The primary archer was Chad Henderson. Chad was the golden child of Arthur Henderson, a prominent local real estate developer and the president of the school board. Chad had learned early on that his family's money bought him immunity. He tormented the poorer kids, disrupted classes, and always played the victim when caught. Principal Richard Sterling, a man whose spine seemed entirely composed of PTA donations, never disciplined Chad. The tension finally snapped on a crisp Tuesday afternoon in October. Sarah was grading papers at a picnic bench during recess when she heard the shouting. She dropped her red pen and sprinted toward the edge of the playground. A crowd of children had formed a circle near the chain-link fence, pushing her way through the chanting kids. Sarah found Tommy pinned against the fence by Chad and two of his cronies. Chad was dangling something just out of Tommy's reach, a small, silver pocket watch. Sarah knew that watch. Tommy had brought it in for show and tell weeks ago. It had belonged to his late mother, one of the few physical memories he had of her before she passed away from cancer. "Give it back, Chad," Tommy demanded, his voice trembling, not with fear, but with a restrained, desperate anger. His fists were balled at his sides. "What are you going to do about it?" "Biker trash," Chad sneered, tossing the watch up and catching it. "Gonna get your daddy's little gang to beat me up. I said give it back." Tommy lunged forward. He didn't throw a punch. He merely reached for the watch. But Chad, realizing he was losing his audience, took a dramatic step backward, intentionally tripped over a tree root, and fell hard onto the asphalt. The watch slipped from his fingers, hitting a rock with a sickening crack. The glass face shattered. Chad immediately grabbed his knee and began to wail. "He pushed me, mister! Sterling! He pushed me!" Before Sarah could even reach them, Principal Sterling was already marching across the blacktop, his face flushed with indignation. He didn't look at the shattered watch on the ground. He didn't look at Tommy's devastated, tear-streaked face. He only saw Arthur Henderson's son clutching his knee. "Thomas Miller," Sterling bellowed. "My office, right this second." "Wait, Richard, that's not what happened." Sarah interjected, stepping between the principal and the boy. Chad stole Tommy's property. Tommy didn't push him. Chad tripped. Sterling shot Sarah a warning glare. Miss Jenkins, I do not need your input on disciplinary matters. Look at Chad's knee. This boy is a menace. It's exactly what I warned the district about when we let his kind enroll here. Sarah felt a hot flash of pure rage. His kind, she echoed, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. My office. Miss Jenkins. You too, since you seem to want to be his lawyer. 10 minutes later, the atmosphere in the principal's office was suffocating. Tommy sat in an oversized leather chair, staring blankly at the shattered pieces of his mother's watch in his palms. He wasn't crying anymore. He just looked incredibly small and defeated. Principal Sterling sat behind his massive mahogany desk, already drafting an expulsion recommendation. He had completely bypassed a suspension. This is a zero-tolerance school. Thomas, Sterling said, adjusting his glasses. We do not tolerate violence. We do not tolerate gang behavior. He's 8 years old. Richard Mott. Sarah slammed her hands down on the desk, startling both the principal and the boy. He is an 8-year-old child who was being bullied. Chad Henderson cornered him, stole a precious family heirloom, and broke it. I saw the entire thing. If you try to expel Tommy for this, I will formally dispute it. Sterling leaned back, interlacing his fingers. Sarah, you are a bright young teacher. You have a long career ahead of you. Do not throw it away over a lost cause. Mr. Henderson is fully aware of the incident Chad called him from the nurse's office. Arthur is demanding Tommy's immediate expulsion. And frankly, I agree. The boy is a liability. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Sarah looked down at Tommy. The boy refused to look up, assuming the adults would do what adults always did to him, throw him away. I won't let you do this, Sarah said, her voice shaking with adrenaline. If you process that expulsion, I am going to the superintendent, and if he doesn't listen, I will go to the Riverside Tribune. I will tell them exactly how Oak Ridge protects the bullies of wealthy donors while punishing the victims. Sterling's face turned an ugly shade of purple. You are bordering on insubordination, Miss Jenkins. I don't care, Sarah shot back. Call Dave Miller. Call his father right now. Tell him what happened to his son's watch. Sterling scoffed. I am not inviting a criminal into my office. Then I will, Sarah said. She grabbed the emergency contact file off Sterling's desk before he could stop her. She dialed Dave Miller's number on her cell phone, right there in the office, when the gruff, deep voice answered. Sarah didn't flinch. Mr. Miller, this is Sarah Jenkins, Tommy's teacher. There has been an incident at school. She explained everything: Chad's bullying, the broken watch, and Sterling's attempt to expel Tommy to protect a donor's son. There was a long, heavy silence on the other end of the line. So long. Sarah thought the call had dropped. Finally, Dave Miller spoke. His voice was terrifyingly calm. Keep my boy with you. Miss Jenkins, don't let that principal near him. I'll be there tomorrow morning. The line went dead. That night, Sarah barely slept. The weight of what she had done pressed down on her chest. She had blatantly defied the most powerful man in the school and threatened to expose the school board president. In the highly political environment of Oak Ridge, she had basically signed her own resignation letter. Worse, she wasn't sure what Dave Miller was planning. I'll be there tomorrow morning. The words echoed in her head. Had she just incited a violent confrontation, Dave was a hell's angel. Men in his circle didn't settle disputes with strongly worded emails and PTA mediation. They lived by their own code of loyalty and retaliation. She arrived at Oak Ridge Elementary early the next morning, the sky still a bruised purple before the dawn. The school felt eerily quiet. When she checked her inbox in the staff lounge, she found a formal email from Principal Sterling effective immediately. You are placed on administrative warning pending a review of your professional conduct. She printed the email, crumpled it up, and threw it in the trash. By 8 a.m., the school was buzzing with its usual chaotic energy. Minivans and Mercedes-Benz SUVs clogged the drop-off lane. Arthur Henderson himself had arrived, strutting into the main office in a tailored suit, a smug smile plastered across his face. He was there to finalize Tommy's expulsion. Tommy hadn't shown up. His desk at the back of Sarah's homeroom sat empty. Sarah felt a sinking feeling in her stomach. Had Dave Miller decided it wasn't worth the fight? Had he just pulled Tommy out of the school to avoid the drama? First period began. Sarah tried to guide her class through a reading comprehension exercise, but her eyes kept darting to the window. At 8:45 a.m., it started. It didn't begin as a sound, but as a vibration. The coffee in Sarah's mug began to ripple. Then, a low, guttural rumbling echoed through the valley, growing steadily louder until it sounded like a fleet of low-flying bombers was approaching the school. The kids in Sarah's class stopped reading. "What is that?" one little girl asked, her eyes wide. Sarah walked to the window and pulled up the blinds. Her breath caught in her throat. Turning off the main boulevard and pulling into the long, circular driveway of Oak Ridge Middle School was a massive column of motorcycles. It wasn't just Dave Miller. It was a terrifyingly precise, organized formation of heavy iron and leather. There were at least 50 of them, huge, bearded men wearing black leather cuts adorned with the infamous winged death's head patch of the Hells Angels. They rode two abreast, their engines roaring in a deafening, synchronized symphony that rattled the school's windows. The sheer presence of them was overwhelming. They bypassed the visitor parking lot entirely, pulling their heavy bikes up onto the wide concrete plaza right in front of the school's main glass doors. Panic erupted in the hallways. The school's intercom crackled to life. Principal Sterling's voice, high-pitched and trembling. "Teachers, please lock your doors. Initiate a soft lockdown. I repeat, soft lockdown. Do not let the children out of your sight." Sarah watched from her window as the bikers kicked down their stands in unison. The engines died out one by one, leaving a sudden, ringing silence in the air that felt even more intimidating than the roar. The men dismounted. They didn't look like they were there to riot. They weren't holding baseball bats or chains. They just stood by their bikes, forming a massive, human barricade of leather and denim across the front of the school. From the center of the pack, a massive custom Harley trike rolled forward. Dave Miller stepped off. He was wearing his full club colors, a heavy silver chain hooked to his wallet, and dark sunglasses. But what caught Sarah's eye was who was holding his hand. Tommy. The boy looked terrified of the school, but perfectly safe in the shadow of his giant father and the 50 intimidating men standing behind him. Sarah didn't listen to the intercom. She didn't lock her door. She turned to her class. "Everyone, stay in your seats and read quietly. I will be right back." She stepped out of her classroom and walked briskly down the hallway toward the main foyer. Through the glass double doors, she could see Principal Sterling and Arthur Henderson cowering behind the front reception desk. Sterling had a phone pressed to his ear, his face chalk white, likely begging the police to arrive. Sarah pushed past the trembling security guard and shoved the heavy glass doors open, stepping out into the cool morning air. 50 pairs of hardened eyes turned to look at her. These were men who had seen the darkest corners of the world, men who lived outside the bounds of polite society. The intimidation factor was suffocating. Dave Miller took his sunglasses off and looked down at Tommy. He pointed a massive, calloused finger at Sarah. "Is that her T?" Dave asked. Tommy nodded slowly. Yeah. Dad. That's Miss Jenkins. Dave Miller let go of his son's hand and walked slowly up the concrete steps toward Sarah. The other bikers crossed their arms, watching her every move. Sarah forced herself to stand tall, refusing to let her hands shake. Dave stopped a few feet from her. He towered over her by 1.5 feet. He reached into his leather vest, inside the school. Sarah could see Sterling frantically waving at her to get back inside, but Dave didn't pull out a weapon. He pulled out a small, velvet box. He held it out to Sarah. "My boy told me what you did yesterday," Dave rumbled, his deep voice carrying across the silent plaza. "He told me you stood in front of that principal and put your own job on the line for him. Nobody does that for us. Nobody does that for my kid." Sarah looked at the box, then up at Dave. "I'm his teacher, Mr. Miller. It's my job to protect him." "No," Dave said firmly. "Your job is to teach him how to read. What you did was show him that somebody in this stuck-up, snobby town actually gives a damn about what's right." Dave opened the velvet box. Inside was an exquisite, antique silver pocket watch. It was a pristine, working replica of the one Chad Henderson had destroyed. "I can't fix his mother's watch," Dave said, his voice cracking just a fraction. "But I got him a new one. I want you to give it to him." Sarah frowned in confusion. "Me? Why me?" Dave gestured to the 50 bikers behind him. "Because if I go in there, they're gonna arrest me for trespassing. And if I hand it to him out here, those rich punks inside will just find another reason to take it from him. But if you give it to him, and you walk him back into that school, well, let's just say my brothers and I are here to make sure absolutely nobody interrupts his education today. The Hells Angels hadn't come to burn the school down. They had come to escort Tommy Miller to class and to show the administration exactly who stood behind the quiet boy in the scuffed boots." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. She took the velvet box from Dave's massive hand. She walked down the steps to where Tommy was standing, nervously twisting the hem of his denim vest. "Ready to go learn about the solar system?" "Tommy?" Sarah asked gently, offering her hand. Tommy looked up at his dad. Dave nodded. Tommy took Sarah's hand. As Sarah and Tommy walked up the steps and approached the school doors, a sound echoed behind them. It wasn't the roar of engines, it was the sound of 50 hardened outlaw bikers raising their hands and delivering a slow, booming, synchronized round of applause for a second-grade teacher. When Sarah pulled the glass doors open and stepped into the foyer, Principal Sterling and Arthur Henderson were standing there, frozen in shock, as the police cruisers finally wailed into the distance. The real fight was just beginning. The silence inside the school foyer was heavier than the roar of the engines outside. As Sarah Jenkins walked young Tommy Miller through the glass double doors, Principal Richard Sterling and Arthur Henderson stood paralyzed, flanked by a trembling security guard, through the windows behind them. The 50 members of the Hells Angels remained parked along the edge of the school's circular drive, an immovable wall of leather, chrome, and quiet authority. "Miss Jenkins," Sterling finally choked out, his voice cracking as he adjusted his crooked tie. "What is the meaning of this? You are fraternizing with a known criminal syndicate. I am walking my student to class. Richard," Sarah said, her voice steady despite the frantic beating of her heart. She squeezed Tommy's shoulder reassuringly. "Tommy is here to learn, and as I recall, it is a violation of state law to impede a child's access to public education without formal, documented cause." Arthur Henderson stepped forward, his face flushed a violent shade of crimson. The wealthy real estate developer was not used to being defied, let alone by a middle school English teacher. "You think this is a game? You think bringing a biker gang to terrorize my son and this faculty makes you a hero? I want her fired. Richard. Right now. And I want that boy removed from the premises by force if necessary." Before Sterling could respond, the wail of sirens pierced the morning air. 4 Riverside Police Department cruisers swerved into the driveway, their lights flashing off the polished chrome of the Harleys. Henderson smirked triumphantly. "Finally, the adults are here. Let's see how tough your biker friends are when they're in handcuffs." Sarah's stomach dropped. She watched through the glass as several officers drew their batons and approached Dave Miller. But Dave didn't flinch. He calmly pulled a piece of paper from his leather vest and handed it to the lead sergeant. Sarah couldn't hear the conversation, but she watched the sergeant's aggressive posture slowly deflate. The officer read the paper, looked at the line of neatly parked motorcycles, and then nodded respectfully to Dave. The sergeant walked up the school steps, pulled open the glass door, and stepped into the foyer. "Arrest them," Henderson demanded immediately. "They are trespassing and threatening a public school." The sergeant sighed, looking at Henderson with a mixture of exhaustion and annoyance. "Mr. Henderson, I can't arrest them. They aren't breaking any laws." "What are you talking about?" Sterling gasped. "They are a gang. They are citizens who applied for and received a peaceful assembly permit from the city yesterday afternoon," the sergeant explained flatly. "Mr. Miller holds a valid permit to stage a public awareness demonstration regarding anti-bullying in public schools on the public sidewalk and the drop-off zone. They aren't blocking fire lanes. They aren't brandishing weapons. And their engines are off. Until they break a noise ordinance or step foot inside the building. My hands are tied." Sarah couldn't help the small smile that tugged at the corner of her mouth. Dave Miller wasn't just a brute, he was a brilliant tactician. He had outplayed the school administration using their own bureaucratic rules. Henderson saw Sarah's smile and completely lost his temper. He rounded on Principal Sterling, pointing a manicured finger directly at the principal's chest. "If you don't fire this insubordinate woman right this second, Richard, I will pull every dime of funding the PTA provides. I will have you replaced by the board by Friday. Do it. Now." Sterling, a man who valued his comfortable salary above all moral obligations, caved instantly. He refused to look Sarah in the eye. "Sarah Jenkins," Sterling muttered, his face pale. "You are terminated from your position at Oak Ridge Middle School, effective immediately, for gross misconduct and endangering the student body. Gather your personal belongings. The security guard will escort you off the property." Tommy looked up at Sarah, his small eyes widening in horror. "Miss Jenkins. No, you can't leave. Please." Tears stung Sarah's eyes, but she refused to let Henderson see her cry. She knelt down to Tommy's eye level and gently placed the velvet box containing the new pocket watch into his hands. "I'm not leaving you." "Tommy," she whispered fiercely, "I am just going home for a little bit. You take this watch, you go to class, you do your math, and you hold your head up high. Nobody can take your dignity unless you hand it to them. Do you understand?" Tommy nodded, a single tear cutting a track down his cheek. Sarah stood up, gave Henderson a look of pure, unadulterated disgust, and turned toward her classroom to pack her things. As she was escorted out the side door of the school 15 minutes later, holding a cardboard box of her belongings, she saw Dave Miller still standing by his bike. Dave saw the box. He saw the security guard. His jaw tightened. He didn't yell, and he didn't charge the building. He simply pulled out his cell phone and made a call. The battle for the school parking lot was over, but the war for Oak Ridge had just begun. The heavy oak doors of the boardroom swung open with a resounding thud, halting Arthur Henderson mid-sentence. Standing in the doorway was Dave Miller. He had traded his club leather for a crisp, tailored black suit that stretched over his massive frame. His neck tattoos were still visible, a stark contrast to the boardroom's sterile elegance. But it wasn't Dave who made Henderson freeze in his tracks. Beside the biker walked Preston Gallagher, a silver-haired shark of a man carrying a slim Italian leather briefcase. Gallagher was a senior partner at one of the most ruthless civil rights litigation firms in Los Angeles, a lawyer known for making multinational corporations sweat. "Security," Henderson barked, his face turning crimson. "This is a closed session." "Security let us in." "Arthur," Gallagher replied smoothly, bypassing Sarah and tossing a thick stack of manila folders onto the polished mahogany table. They slid perfectly, stopping right in front of the stunned board members. "My client, Mr. Miller, belongs to an organization with a highly robust legal defense fund. When Dave called me, I put my best private investigators on the case. What they unearthed today is rather fascinating." Gallagher paced the room like a predator scenting blood. Inside those folders are sworn affidavits from 7 different parents detailing severe, unprovoked bullying by your son, Chad. Furthermore, we retrieved deleted security footage from the school's servers via a perfectly legal emergency subpoena served 3 hours ago. Principal Sterling turned the color of chalk. "The video explicitly shows Chad intentionally tripping and destroying Thomas Miller's property while Thomas did absolutely nothing." Gallagher continued. Henderson slammed his fist down. "This is blackmail. You have no jurisdiction here." "It's leverage," Gallagher corrected, a terrifying, icy smile playing on his lips. "Here is how tonight proceeds. If you vote to terminate Miss Jenkins, or attempt to expel Thomas, I will file a massive federal discrimination and defamation lawsuit. I will drag this school's reputation through the mud, expose the administration's cover-ups, and trigger a state education audit of every single financial donation Arthur Henderson has made. You won't just be politically ruined, Arthur. You'll be facing criminal fraud charges." The boardroom fell deathly silent. The impenetrable wealth and arrogance that usually shielded Henderson entirely evaporated. He was outplayed. "However," Gallagher said, snapping his briefcase shut, "if Miss Jenkins's record is entirely cleared, and Thomas is allowed to continue his education in peace, we will consider this matter resolved." "I call for a vote," a panicked board member blurted out, desperate to distance herself, "to dismiss all disciplinary actions against Miss Jenkins and Thomas Miller." "Seconded," another yelled. In under 30 seconds, the vote was unanimous. Henderson grabbed his coat and stormed out in disgrace, his reign over Oakridge permanently shattered. Sarah stood, her legs trembling. Dave Miller extended his massive, calloused hand. "You stood up for my boy, Miss Jenkins. The club takes care of its own. Your family now." The next morning, the drop-off lane was quiet. But when Sarah walked into her classroom, Tommy was already there, wearing his scuffed boots, holding his new silver watch, and smiling brightly. If this story of standing up to bullies and finding justice in unexpected places kept you on the edge of your seat, smash that like button, share this incredible true-to-life drama with your friends and family to remind them that true heroes come in all shapes and sizes. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more thrilling, heart-pounding stories every single week.